What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here, delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. You can head to the link in my description below, sign up for my newsletter, and get a free graphic novel from me. Now, I have moved my comic reviews over to another channel. It's called JDA Talks Comics. And I'll leave that link in the description below also, so you can follow that along. But since this is such a big Comicsgate book, I wanted to put this on the main channel and show it to you here, where we've got the biggest audience already. And this is Cyberfrog Warts and All by Mr. Ethan Van Sciver. Beautiful cover of Cyberfrog right here, kind of in action. Nice little aerial pose as he's fighting. It's a wraparound. Nice thing. There's Heather Swain on the back, along with Salamandroid. Cool stuff. I love the yellows. The color is great. I think Kyle Ritter does the colors for all the stuff. Just always makes me happy to see his colors. Good work. All right, the inside of this book is a nice little, like, sort of classy look to it. So if you didn't want the dust jacket, which has some beautiful art on it, you can have, like, this really super classic looking book. All green for the frog. Good theming. Inside, you got some of the like binding paper right here, and it has some art printed on the binding paper too, which is a nice touch. It's a really well constructed book. I'm very happy with the way that this is put together. This is on par or better than the DC or Marvel omnibuses that I collect regularly, which you probably know if you watch the channel. And it's got a bunch of Cyberfrog in it, so you get a nice table of contents. You know what you're reading right here. I had no idea about Cyberfrog before this, so I mean, I read Blood Honey, and that was my first experience with it, and I thought, you know, that was a start of a story which probably needed a little bit more to it. And I understand Blood Honey a little bit better after reading this, so I do recommend that if you are interested in that you go read these old Cyberfrogs first. I don't know how much is, quote, in continuity or not based on what he's doing now, but it does give you a feel for what the characters are and kind of really explains things in a way that I think is pretty helpful if you're interested in the character. So it started out, Hall of Heroes published the first couple issues, and then Harris Comics picked it up, famous for Vampirella. And then he did, after Cyberfrog number 4, he did another mini-series real quick, and an issue 0, a crossover, and then this other issue 0, which happens also, which kind of gets tied into the Salamandroid zine, and then another 2-issue series here. So there's actually quite a bit of Cyberfrog content. Now, Ethan started this pretty early in his career, and you can see that his art style really is not refined to what it is today. At the beginning of this, the first couple issues have no color. There are colors later on in the book. Very, very 90s stuff. And, the first couple Hall of Heroes issues, I was not super invested in it. It felt okay. He sets up a couple things, like with Cyberfrog, he's just this, like, I guess, vigilante that rolls around who's kind of dark and edgy, of course, because it's 90s. And so he kills the bad guys. He does not care about human life. He just wants to get rid of the bad things and purge them. And, he fights an evil fly, of course. He fights there's this, like, gang called Traffic, who is kind of in the background throughout the whole thing and in through part of this. But it really starts to pick up once Harris picks up the property, and I'll get to that in just a second through this. You get a couple, like I said, you get a nice start for the couple issues here. And even though they do renumber and do change the titles, they do kind of continue. You get kind of the same characters through here. Here's the main bad guy here in a double-page spread. The best I can liken this to is if you were reading the 90s comics, and if you read, like, Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like back when they were indie comics, or like early Savage Dragon, this is kind of in the same vein as that. You've got kind of really wacky out there villains. You've got a really wacky out there premise, and it's just over the top. The violence is really over the top, and that's what you get. Now, I had fun with those books quite a bit when I was a kid, so this did remind me a lot of just being happy as like a 12, 13-year-old, getting the new Savage Dragon issue before Eric Larson went crazy. And that's what you get there. Now, the colors are not my favorite through this. And Ethan actually mentions this. The cool thing about each one of these issues is he gives a little introduction to every single issue and kind of the state of things, where it was happening as it was at, to give you a little perspective on his career and give a perspective of just kind of his thoughts on things. And, you know, he didn't love all the colors through this book as much either. You know, I think, again, this is early career, and so he was just kind of finding his way in comics here. Some of the art is a little inconsistent at points, but a lot of it's really cool also. And through here, you're really starting to build this like new bad guy who like has these powers, and he's like he's a big time gamma male type of deal. And he's always chasing after girls and trying to eat them, and really upset that like they don't give him the time of day or whatnot. And so he eventually like teams up with this like ancient god and becomes a really nasty individual. But we're a little ahead of ourselves in terms of talking about the plot. But that's going on while Cyberfrog kind of fights a monster of the week in between this, as that kind of builds up in the background. So it's really nice, actually. That subplot serialized storytelling actually works really well through this, and just feels like, again, anything out of the 90s Image comics like that. So another interesting thing I should mention is that Cyberfrog is very sarcastic throughout all this. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which I really appreciate. I like to have fun with comics, and so Cyberfrog actually breaks the fourth wall a little bit, just like She-Hulk did in the John Byrne stuff in the 80s. Talks about Ethan, kind of mocks Ethan. It's really funny when that happens, and I appreciate the humor in that. Now, this sort of 4-issue series is kind of the main bulk of it. So this is really what you need to read out of anything to get the Cyberfrog experience, I feel like. Some of the art's good, some of it's inconsistent. And here we go. As this guy, I think at this point, here's Heather Swain. Where does he become like the big giant monster? He's not quite there yet. He's still got his like spider arms or whatever it is. Little cheesecake shots here. Very, 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 very mid-90s. But, that's nothing to complain about. Lots of just, like, really gory monster action throughout the entire thing. And it's a nice popcorn read. So that's fun. So toward the end of this, that traffic group, who's a gang sort of deal, gets all these characters together who are going to be, like, the bad supervillain team, like, kind of a Sinister Six. Or again, Savage Dragon had the same thing. I forget what they were called in that series. But sort of a villains united together to try to stop Cyberfrog and finally kill him at this point. And they at that point he switches things up and it changes to Reservoir Frog, which is pretty funny. He says in here that it really has nothing to do with the book title, because it's just he liked the movie Reservoir Dogs and thought that was funny. And I'm cool with that. This is probably, I think Reservoir Frog is probably the best work in here. So at this point you get full color. I'm really all about full color comics. And the art just feels a little bit cleaner through this. You can tell he's kind of really developed his style much more than he had in the prior books. And Cyberfrog goes through some interesting iterations through this, where like he gets himself into trouble and he kind of adapts. And his like armor like adapts, his robot armor or whatever it is, to kind of give him stronger and better powers throughout all this. Well, he's hunting some things down, and it has to do with the whole traffic group. Let me get a little hint at some other stuff through here. And then it ends up going into the swamp, and he meets this strange character who calls itself his mother. And you learn a little bit about that when it gets into Cyberfrog number 0 here. You look at the gore. This is peak 90s right here. This is fun. This is almost a Liefeld drawing. Oh my gosh, no feet. Oh my gosh, super fun. So yeah, I enjoyed this as Cyberfrog fights off a swarm of mosquito villains who you are supposed to learn about later. And I don't know if that ends up being the group, the Vizpiz, I think they are in Blood Honey. or if that's someone else. I think it's the same group. But you start to learn that there's a little more to Cyberfrog's past here, and that actually creates a pretty interesting storyline for this book, where it starts out just like pretty, edgy superhero, fighting bad guy, lots of blood, there's not much to it. And now at this point through Reservoir Frogs, Ethan like really is starting to think about Cyberfrog's origin and like what, there's a deeper meaning to all this and creating an actual storyline here. So good stuff through this. Really enjoyable. I think like I said, Reservoir Frogs is probably my favorite in the book. Then you get the origin. You find out he's from some other planet, where it's like, they feel like they're defenders of the galaxy. The bad guys show up in the middle of this, of course, to fight Cyberfrog. And Cyberfrog summarily kicks their asses, because what else would it be if it's not a superhero comic? But the origin is pretty compelling, and basically the way that the creatures gestate is they end up being kind of amorphous blobs of things, and they kind of take on the properties of their, quote, parents, the first things they come in contact with. And of course, Cyberfrog came in contact with a frog. So Heather Swain learns all about his sort of origin and background, and then finds out that there's another one out there, and that's pretty interesting right there. Cyberfrog versus Creed is the next crossover. I had never read Creed. I mean, I've heard of it, and I've seen the crowdfund for Creed that Ethan's running on behalf of his friend. Pretty basic team up. They have a little bit of a misunderstanding at first. This leads to Creed. Art in this is super slick too. I really enjoyed this one too. But it leads to Creed getting manipulated by some bad guys to fight him, and then eventually they team up and take out the bad guys. Pretty simple stuff, but solid. What's interesting, I feel like this doesn't add as much to the whole lore mythos that's going on compared to a lot of the other books, but it is a team up. That's kind of how things go. And then you get to Salamandroid, and so this is from an Ashcan number 0, and it kind of gives Salamandroid's origin, and this then gets retooled once he gets into the actual Salamandroid zine, into a longer story where you see the background of Salamandroid like meeting some girl and then kind of helping her out against some bad guy vampire types, and that's that. And I mean, it was a nice setup, like they were going to come together, Cyberfrog and Salamandroid, at some point. Just kind of, unfortunately, things got canceled, which you find out why towards the end of this. And that is kind of the end of that. The rest of the book's in black and white here, which, again, I really liked the color, so I was kind of sad about that. But we get back to the Cyberfrog story as he's kind of dealing with a new bad guy here who's really difficult for him to handle, and lots of nice Heather Swain moments. At this point, he's really developing the relationships between the characters in this, so it starts to become something much more appealing than the first couple issues that he had with Hall of Heroes. So very happy here. You can see that his art style is just 100% dialed in at this point. There's no inconsistencies anymore. It's just like it's watching the journey of like him becoming an artist from like here to here is pretty cool. It's watching a career really take fold. And there's some bad guys about to show up. There may be aliens. This I think kind of leads into Blood Honey a little bit, and it's to be continued. And unfortunately, things get canceled at that point. So I enjoyed this a lot, actually. I had a lot of fun with this. This is you get lots of cool advertisements and different pinups and stuff in the back here. But the book overall is just 90s fare fun. Like when I picked up Savage Dragon Archives and reread those, I got to compare this to that. It just feels very similar on that level. You've got, green superheroes who are badasses who kind of have an unknown origin, who are fighting these kind of off-the-wall villains with a ton of violence, and that's definitely a very similar vibe for the creations, and I liked both of those. So if you do enjoy that kind of 90s fare, this is definitely going to be a book for you. I wouldn't take it too seriously if you are sitting there trying to pick apart, like, motivations and, wanting some, like, really, deep Alan Moore storyline. This is not for you. But, you know, I kind of find that Alan Moore type of stuff really boring, and I kind of find this nice, fun reading that I like to do, you know, at the end of a day when I'm just hanging out and trying to relax. So, good stuff. Overall, like I said, a little bit of inconsistency in the art towards the beginning, middle, and a little bit, the story really doesn't pick up towards that middle point either. But once it does, it really just goes full tilt and is awesome from there. So I'd give this an 8 out of 10 overall. Love the book construction, enjoyable stuff. And that is my Cyberfrog review. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down below, and hit that like and subscribe button. See you guys later.